here are your Unit 12. Okay, I've got page 2 notes. All right, my Unit 12, page 2 notes. So for these notes, it's talking about adding and subtracting polynomials. So we learned in our last video that polynomials, okay, we learned a lot of different things actually. We learned that polynomials are an expression consisting of many terms. Okay, we learned that there's all kinds of different numbers of terms they can have. They can have 1 term for monomial, they can have 2 for binomial, 3 for trinomial, and then 4 plus for polynomial. Okay, so there's all these different options, all depending on the number of terms. We also talked about polynomials, talking about their degree. Okay, we learned that degree is the power of the exponent. Okay, so if I look at this 6 right here, there is no variable there. So there's not going to be an exponent there. So if I don't have one, it would be constant. If I have x to the first power, linear, x to the second power, quadratic, x to the third power, cubic, and x to the fourth power, quartic. All right? So we learned all these different things about polynomials. Okay, we learned how to write them in standard form, which means they first must be alphabetical and then to the highest exponent. And we also learned how to classify them. So now looking at our new notes, we're going to learn how to add and subtract them. All right. So it says you can add and subtract polynomials by simply combining like terms. Okay. It is as simple as that. We've already learned combining like terms, but there's a little bit of extra work we have to do now that we haven't talked about in a while. Okay. So first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add some notes over here to the side. So we're going to write multiplying and dividing. Okay, so multiplying and dividing. Whenever we're doing multiplying and dividing, we use this triangle. Okay, it's at the back of your journals already, but we're going to go ahead and add it to these notes here so that we can use it as a very quick reference. All right, so we make our triangle. All right, and then we split it into 3 pieces. That top part is my plus part. All right, it's that part that gets snow. All right, we're adding snow to the top of that if that's my mountain. And these bottom parts don't ever get snow. They're sad. There's no snow there. It doesn't exist. All right, that's one way to explain it. So as a reminder for what this triangle is, I have multiplying and dividing. This says if I multiply a negative by a negative, so I cover those up, I now know I get a positive. If I was to multiply a positive and a negative, I cover both of those up, I know that I get a negative there. All right, so we're going to use this trick that we already learned, all right, to help us out here. So it says I'm going to add these. I actually have to take that positive and distribute it out to all of these different pieces. All right, so let's go ahead and see what that looks like. So I take this positive, I'm distributing it. Whenever I distribute, remember we are multiplying. Okay, so I'm going to leave this first part as it is. I don't have to change anything. So I have 11x minus x squared plus 13. Okay, nothing changed about that first part. Now I'm just multiplying this positive. I have this positive 2 times that positive there. So I have plus 2x squared. All right, then I have a negative here times that positive. So I use my triangle. I have a negative times a positive, which gives me that negative. So I get a negative 23. And then that same thing will repeat when I have a positive times a negative again. A positive times a negative gives me that negative there. So I have minus 5x. Okay, so now we've got to combine our like terms. I'm going to go with the highest degree first. Okay, everything's the same variable. It's all x's, so I don't have to worry about that. But I've got to go ahead and focus now and make sure that I'm going with my highest degree. All right, so I'm going to look at this negative x squared and this plus 2x squared. So if I was to plug this in my calculator, I would do 2 minus 1, all right, which would give me 1, okay, x squared. So I'll just write x squared. So now this piece is taken care of and this piece is taken care of. All right, the next thing I have, if I look here, I have 11x to the first power. That's my next degree. So I'm going to go and underline that. Then that plus 13 doesn't have a variable, that minus 23 doesn't have a variable, but this negative 5x does have a variable, and it's this x to the first power. So I'm going to combine these two, because remember, we're combining my like terms, things that are like. This is both x to the first power, just like these ones previously were both x to the second power. All right, so now I have to do 11x minus 5x. If I was to plug 11 minus 5 into my calculator, I would get 6x there. So I'm going to have plus 6x. All right, I'm going to go and put a check mark here and a check mark here. All right, that way I know I'm keeping up with what I've already done. So now I've got the next part. I have plus 13 minus 23. All right, those are like terms. Neither of them have a variable with it. If I was to plug a positive 13 and subtract a negative 23 from it in my calculator, I would end up getting negative 10. Okay, so now I check out my answer. It's all in ABC order because I only have x's, and then it goes from my highest exponent down. So this is my final answer here. There we go. So I get x squared plus 6x minus 10. So now for my subtraction example, I've got to do the same exact thing. I've got to take this negative and I've got to distribute it to all these different pieces here. So I'm going to distribute that negative to the first piece, distribute that negative to the second piece, and distribute that negative to the third piece. And when we're distributing, remember that we multiply there. All right? So once again, I'm going to write out this first piece the same because I don't have to do anything with it yet. So do 4x squared plus 5x. Then I have a negative times a positive. When I use my triangle, a negative times a positive gives me a negative, so I'll have negative, So I'll have negative 7x. Then I have a negative times a positive again, so I'll end up with a negative 3x squared. And then once again, I have a negative times a positive, which gives me a negative 1. All right, I've got to combine my like terms. Once again, everything's an x, so I don't have to worry about that very much. So now I've just got to look at my highest degree or my highest exponent. So that's going to be this 4x squared here and that negative 3x squared. So I would do 4 minus 3, which gives me 1. So I'll just have x squared. Then I go ahead and put a check underneath that because I've finished with that. Then I go ahead and move on to my next highest degree. I have this x to the 1 power and this x to the 1 power. So I've got to combine both of these pieces. I have 5x minus 7x. All right, so I'll do 5 minus 7 in my calculator, which would give me a negative 2x. I've now finished with this piece, and I've now finished with this piece. Then I'm left with just this last piece here that didn't have a variable with it. So I'll just write, and there's nothing else to combine, so I'll just write negative 1. Okay, so I check my alphabetical order. Everything has an x, so I'm good. I don't have to worry about that. Then I check, that's to the degree of 2, that's to the degree of 1, and that one's just my constant term there. So I am done with this problem. Okay, so one thing you'll notice is when I distribute that negative, okay, it changes the symbol. So this was originally a positive 7x, and it became a negative 7x. This was originally a positive 3x squared. It became a negative 3x squared. This was originally a positive 1, and it became a negative 1. Okay? If this was a negative 1, I would have done a negative times a negative, which would have actually given me a positive. So whenever you're actually doing subtraction here, you're going to just flip these symbols, all right? So if it's positive, it becomes negative. If it was negative, it becomes positive, okay? So I'm going to go and work through a couple of these examples. I'm going to go ahead and start with number 15 here. All right, so I'm going to move down a little bit. So 15, once again, I'm adding here. So I've got to distribute this piece right here. When I distribute, remember I'm multiplying. So I write out the first one as is. I have w cubed minus 2w squared minus 5. Okay, I have a positive times a positive, which is just going to be plus 3w squared. And then I have a positive times a negative. I cover that up. I end up with a negative. So I get negative 11 here. All right, now I've got to combine my like terms. If I look here, I have w to the 3rd power. That's my highest exponent or my highest degree. There's nothing else to combine that with. It's the only one to the 3rd power that has the variable of w. So now I have w to the third power. There's nothing else I can do with that. So now I have to go find my w's to the second power. I have 1 right here, and I have 1 right there. So I have a negative 2w squared plus 3w squared. So I have negative 2 plus 3, which gives me a positive 1. So I just have plus w squared. That is now done. That is now done. Now I have my last remaining pieces that do not have a variable. I have negative 5 and I have negative 11. If I was to plug into my calculator negative 5 minus 11, I would end up getting a negative 16 here. So there we go. I've gotten w to the third power plus w to the second power minus 16. All right, here we go. Moving on along. I'm going to go and work through number 19. Number 19, I have subtraction here. So I still, because I have these parentheses, I have to distribute that there. Okay. So I set up that. I know I'm multiplying there by that negative 1. Remember, you can basically treat it like a negative 1 there. All right, I could write in that little 1 there. So I'm distributing that negative. So I rewrite the first part, x squared plus 17x. Then I have a negative times a positive. Negative times a positive gives me a negative. So I have negative 3x squared. Then I have a positive here, so I have a negative and a positive. Cover that up. I have negative 5x. Remember, because this was subtraction like our example here, all of our signs changed. I can go and double check this to make sure I did it right. This was a positive 3x squared. It became a negative 3x squared. This was a positive 5x. It became a negative 5x. All right, so I know I distributed that negative properly. So now I've just got to combine my like terms. So I go and find, okay, everything's x, so I don't have to worry about alphabetical order. Then from there, I just have to worry about my degree. So I have x squared, and then I have x squared there as well, which is my highest degree. So I have 1x squared minus 3x squared. So if I plug that in the calculator, 1 minus 3, I would end up getting negative 2x squared. All right, so negative 2x squared. So then from there, I am done with both of these two pieces. I'm left with this plus 17x and this minus 5x. They both have x to the first power, so they can both be combined. Then from there, so I have that positive 17x minus 5x. So on my calculator, I would do 17 minus 5, which gives me plus 12x. All right, I am done with this, and I'm done with that. There's nothing else for me to do with this problem. All right, so there's an adding example, and there's a negative example. Remember, when it's negative, I'm flipping my symbols there. All right, that's a good way to memorize that. All right, now let's go ahead and look at 23. 23 looks kind of scary because I have 1, 2, 3 terms, and I have 1, 2, 3 terms within those parentheses, but it's really not that bad. So I have subtraction. So once again, I have to distribute that negative to all three, to this time all 3 places. Previously it wasn't 3, but now it is. So I rewrite the first part. I have 7v minus v squared plus 14. Then, since I'm distributing a negative, I just change my symbols. So right here, that's a positive 15. It becomes a negative 15. Right here, I have a positive 8v, so it becomes a negative 8v. I have a positive v squared, so it becomes a negative v squared. All right? So you can either go through the process of using your triangle, or you can go ahead and flip your symbols there. Either one is a total option for you. So now I'm just going to rewrite this. Everything is to the power of v. All right, so now I've just got to figure out, based on the degree that I have here, which order I put them in. So I have, or how I combine the like terms. So I have negative v squared minus v squared. So I have negative 1 minus 1, which would give me negative 2v squared. This is now done, and this is now done. All right, now I move on to my next one. I have v to the first power. V to the first power. So I know I'm talking about this piece and this piece. I have a positive 7 minus 8. Okay, so I'd plug in 7 minus 8 into my calculator, and I would get negative 1. So I have negative v. This is now done, and this is now done. Now I'm left with 14 minus 15. Okay, 14 minus 15. If I was to plug that into a calculator, I would get -1. All right, I've got 3 more problems that I'm going to work out with you guys. So for problem 24, once again, I'm distributing that negative there. So I'm multiplying. So I rewrite the first one as is, 8x minus 3y. Because it's subtraction, I have to change all my symbols. Right there I had a positive 2y, so I'm going to change it to a negative 2y. Right there I have a negative 13, so I'm going to change it to a positive 13. And then I have a positive 5x, so I'm going to change it to a negative 5x. All right? Then from there, I've got to combine my like terms. Well, this one's a little bit different because this is the first example on this sheet of paper that I'm coming to that has x's and y's. So now I've got to put them in alphabetical order. All right, and that's something that's important about this now. So I know that x comes before y in the alphabet. So I'm going to start with x. I've got 8x to the first power and negative 5x to the first power. So I'm going to do 8 minus 5, which gives me 3x. That is now done, and that is now done. I don't have any more x's to deal with, so now I move on to my y's. I have a negative 3y minus 2y. Okay, both of those are to the first power, so I can combine those like terms. So I do negative 3 minus 2, which would give me negative 5, and then y there. Last but not least, both of those two are done, so now I just have that positive 13 left. I just write that in there, and I am done. Okay, I'm not going to do number 25 and number 26 for you, but I will help you set them up. So it says find the sum. So my word sum is going to mean add. Okay, so what this is telling me on number 25 is that I am going to add. So I'm going to do 8p squared minus 2p plus 15. All of that plus, because my word is sum here, all right, my keyword being sum, plus this other piece right here. So I have 11 minus 2p squared minus 1. And then from there, you would distribute that positive, and you would go ahead and keep going. That is not the answer, but we would keep going there to solve, okay? So then on number 26, I'm going to help you set this one up. The word here is subtract, okay? So I'm going to subtract this. It says I'm going to subtract this from this. So I want you to kind of think about this. If I was to write subtract 3 from 5, okay, I know I would take 5 and I would write 5 minus 3, okay, because I'm taking that beginning 5 and I'm subtracting 3 away from that. So that's exactly what we're going to do with number 26. So I'm going to start with the last piece there. So I have w cubed plus 6w squared minus 2. Then now I'm going to subtract that first piece there. So 2w squared minus 5w plus 10. And once again, that is not the correct answer on those. Okay, you would have to go ahead and, distribute that positive and then distribute that negative and get a final answer. But that is how you would set up both 25 and both 26. So now by getting this page 2 completed of our Unit 12 notes, if I look to my homework here, all right, looking at this very first page of my homework, it says homework 1, classifying polynomials, adding and subtracting polynomials. We could already do the first section. We could already do the second section. Well, now I can complete these 4 bottom problems. It says find each sum or difference, and then answers must be in standard form. Meaning that 1, it has to be in alphabetical order, and 2, that we have to focus on that degree. All right, so alphabetical order, and we're focused on that degree there. All right, so use your notes from page 1 to help you out with this as well. So we've got 11, 12, 13, and 14 that you should now be able to work out the whole entire first set of your homework there. All right, so 11, 12, 13, and 14 are the new problems.